Hey folks, welcome to Kayak DIY. In this video we're going to go over the Dolphin Boss 12 fishing kayak. This here is going to be a full comprehensive review and test. It's also going to cover the Ozark Trail Pro Angler 12 because, well, they are basically the same thing. I happen to have the Dolphin Boss 12, so that is what I'm going to be using. I saw tons of comments online about these kayaks. People had questions, they wanted answers. I'm hoping I can do that in this video. So we're heading over to the Boondocks kayak fishing trailer that I recently purchased. We're going to take the Dolphin Boss 12 that you see there, take it over to the kayak launch, drop it in the water, and let's get this test started. Right away you see that I'm standing up on the kayak, and that probably is the #1 reason that you guys are looking at purchasing this kayak. The other big reason is probably the comfortable seat. You want to have a comfortable seat if you're going to be out on the water all day. And this seat definitely can do just that. This seat here I feel is a higher quality than even some seats that I've seen on kayaks 3 times the price. The kayak tracks really well. It paddles easily. I'm using a backwater assassin paddle that I purchased from yatgear.com. And here I'm sitting and standing multiple times to demonstrate how easy it is to sit and stand. If you have difficulty getting up from a seated position, you can use the stand assist strap. Here I'm paddling while standing up. You can see that the kayak turns easily, is easily maneuverable. I am 200 pounds and I am 6 feet 2 inches tall for reference. Here I put all of my 200 pounds of weight on one side of the kayak just to show you the stability. I'm still paddling around. Here my head and my shoulders moved outside of the gunnel, and that's when I started to have issues. That's when I flipped. So for the most part it's pretty stable. I mean, because I had all of my weight on that one side of the kayak. And most of you probably aren't going to do that. You're not going to have your feet close together standing on one side of the kayak. I am so surprised that that rod holder held onto that fishing rod. I purposely put that fishing rod into that rod holder because that is one of the cons that I had with this kayak. I thought that that rod holder was cheap and shouldn't really be included. Now I am standing up and I am walking around on the deck of the kayak to kind of demonstrate further the stability aspect of the kayak. Remember, I'm 200 pounds and I am 6 feet 2 inches tall. I do have a pretty good sense of balance, but I'm definitely no Olympic athlete. Here I'm walking around on the kayak, going bow to stern, paddling it around. This really isn't practical. An adult isn't going to use the kayak in that manner, but a kid might. So the fact that I'm able to do this just kind of adds to the testament that this is a pretty dang stable kayak. So I just wanted to show that to you. Here I'm going to once again put all of my weight on one side of the kayak, and this time I'm taking my left foot and I'm standing on the side gunnel. And once I put my shoulders and my head outside of the gunnel space, that's when I tipped. But you saw I really didn't tip right away. So once again, pretty stable. You'll see that my camera fell off my head and it didn't sink. That's because I'm using the action hat. It allows you to convert any hat that you have into a camera mount for your GoPro or action camera. Once again, you'll see that my fishing rod actually stayed in that rod holder. I was shocked. I thought for sure I was going to lose that fishing rod, but I was willing to do so for the integrity of this review and this test. And here I am trying to demonstrate how to get back on the kayak. So with most sit-on-top kayaks, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to grab onto something on the top deck of the kayak. You're going to lay your body flat across the water. And then what you're going to do is you're going to pull and kick with your feet at the same time and try to get the majority of your weight in your torso in the center of the kayak. Then at that point you could actually roll and sit your bottom into the kayak. But in this actual test, I just chose to go to my knees because I felt pretty stable already. You'll notice that there's quite a bit of water pooled up on the deck of the kayak, and I found that when I start paddling, that actually goes away and it sucks the water off the top of the deck. Here I am sitting in a high seat position, and I'm going to see if I can flip it. I'm rocking it back and forth to kind of get momentum, and it took quite a bit. We'll rewind that again, and you'll see my head and my shoulders ended up getting outside that gunnel space, and I had already gained enough momentum that I was able to flip the kayak, but it took quite a bit. You can actually see my rod, fishing rod, flopping back and forth too, and by golly, that little rod holder is still holding on to it. So it's kind of proving me wrong in my skepticism. Here I'm in a low seated position, and I was trying to flip. It took a lot more effort to flip in the low seating position. Here is the point of view flip cam, so you're seeing the view from my perspective, and I'm in the low seat position, and I'm trying to flip the kayak. And I mean, you'll see I'm trying to gain momentum to be able to flip this kayak, and it took quite a bit. Once again, you'll see that action hat fell off my head and it floats, so I had no worries that I was going to lose my camera. Put the action hat back on my head and flip the kayak back over, flip the seat back down, and grab my paddle. I should really have a paddle leash on that paddle. That would make it a lot easier. Then I wouldn't have to be chasing it down. And actually, if you had any moving water, you really would want to have a paddle leash, because otherwise you'd have to chase your paddle, and you just don't want to be up a creek without a paddle. That's kind of the old saying. So you'll see that there's water pooling up on the deck. As I mentioned earlier, when you start paddling, it does suck the water down those scupper drains. The scupper drains are small though, and so it does drain slower, and you have to make sure that there's no debris inside the scuppers. Otherwise it won't drain. So that is a con. This kayak is not great at draining water from the deck. So just keep that in mind when you purchase it, and it shouldn't be much of an issue. But as I mentioned there, actually with the little pop-up, you'll see that yes, there's water on the deck, but once I start paddling, it actually sucks that water off the deck. So I don't feel that to be a deal breaker here with the purchase of this kayak. Okay, so we're going to open up the hatch, see how much water got inside the kayak. So there is water inside the kayak, and it might look like a lot to you, but really it's not that much water. I've had several $1,000 kayaks that would have had this much water inside them, if not more. So the Sun Dolphin to me passed the test. There's really not that much water inside the hull. Water weighs about 7.5 pounds per gallon. I weigh 200 pounds. The kayak can support 500 pounds. It would take 40 gallons of water to sink this kayak. Get yourself some dry bags, get yourself a hand bilge pump, and you're ready for any adventure pretty much in this kayak. Just, I wouldn't recommend using this kayak out on the ocean because it doesn't drain very fast. We're going to do a bow to stern walkthrough of this kayak, discussing pros and cons. Number one, I like that drain plug. It's positioned in a really good spot. It makes it easy to drain water should any water get inside the hull of the kayak, which if you own a sit-on-top kayak and you're out on some serious adventures, you're going to get a little bit of water inside the kayak. You'll notice that I had a white patch underneath the kayak. That is actually a Gator Guard keel protector that I put on pretty much all my kayaks. And yes, I did get those keel protectors for free from Gator Guard, so that was a sponsorship that I got. But I really do like them, and I enjoy them, and I would probably buy more once I run out. So here I have deck bungees, and the deck bungees have these nice little hooks which make it easy to adapt the bungees around different objects that you want to strap to the deck. You have nice flush mount rod holders which are positioned in front of the seat and are nice for when you're standing up. You can drop the rods in them. You'll notice that the hatch has a raised lip that keeps water from just running right into the hatch, so that's nice. We got two scupper drains right there. They look large, but really they're not, because they actually taper down to a smaller hole there. so you want to make sure you keep leaves and debris out of them. That is probably the biggest con of this kayak for me, is the fact that it drains kind of slow, but it's not a deal breaker. When you paddle, the water seems to get sucked out of off the deck and goes into those drains, and it does a pretty good job. The water drains quicker from the front of the kayak than it does from the rear. That is something to take note of. You'll notice that it has adjustable foot pegs, and it also has track mounts on the side gunnels there. It has 2 more handles. Here is the nice seat that I love, that I kind of brag about often. Here I'm talking about how you can actually loosen up these straps here, and you can lay the seat flat for transportation, and you can actually use this little clip and attach it to the pad eye there. So when you have it in the back of the truck, or on the top of your car, you simply drop the seat into the low position and you fold that seat back and you attach that bungee to that pad eye, and you're ready to transport your kayak, and you don't have to worry about that seat flopping around or catching the wind. There have been a few online reports of seat issues. I have not had any of those issues. People complain sometimes that when the kayak gets really hot in a certain warm climate environment, and when larger people are sitting on it, that the seat can pop out of position. I have not been able to have that issue reproduced. I have not had any issues with my kayak seat at all. I weigh 200 pounds. I'm using it in Florida, and so yeah, that's all I can say is I have not had those issues. Maybe other people have, but I'm so far very impressed with the seat. Here I'm kind of discussing the seam of the kayak. The seam is actually the thickest part on the kayak. The kayak is made via twin sheet thermoform. Here you can see that they're utilizing the seam to integrate a paddle keeper, a bungee paddle keeper. And I kind of like that because it makes it very easy to replace bungee, because if you have these bungee paddle keepers, eventually if you own the kayak long enough, you'll snag them on something and you'll break a bungee. That design would be very easy to replace a bungee on, and really cost effective. There's another hatch there. The hatch is raised up off the deck of the kayak just like the one in the front. I like that. We have 2 more flush mount rod holders. We got more of that deck bungee there, and just like in the front, the deck bungee is tied with one piece there, but then it has hooks on all the rest, so you can easily use those J hooks to take the bungee off and wrap it around different objects that you want to strap onto the deck of the kayak. We have another drain on the back, and we have a nice big large handle in the stern. So the bow and the stern have nice beefy handles to be able to grab onto, to be able to lift and transport this kayak. You'll notice I have another one of those gator guard patches there on the back. The kayak does have a skid plate that is removable on the bottom, so you really don't need it. You don't need to have a gator guard patch on the back of the kayak. I just threw it on because I have them. I am sponsored by Gator Guard. They gave me free product, but when I run out, I am going to probably buy some more. Here, I highly recommend that you look at getting a C-Tug cart. It makes transporting larger kayaks so much easier. The track mounts there are great, but that little rod holder there, in my opinion, still is not really needed. I wish that they would just get rid of it in the design of the kayak. This rod holder just feels cheap to me, but honestly, when I was flipping the kayak, it held on to the rod, so my skepticism is kind of negated by the fact that it did hold the rod during the flip test. I personally could do without this rod holder. I would rather add my own rod holder to the track mounts that you see there on the side, or maybe have another one of those flush mount rod holders instead. It still feels a little bit flimsy to me, and so I consider that another con. So basically the two biggest cons for me are the fact that the deck of the kayak drains a little bit slow due to the small size scupper holes, and the other con is the fact that they have that cheaper rod holder. Here you can see a prime example of how debris like leaves can get into the scupper holes. These are the scupper holes underneath the seat. The back of the kayak drains slow. You can see water there that's pooled up. To kind of fix that, I simply shifted my weight to be able to get the water to drain into the scupper holes. So in summary, basically there's two cons, and that is the kayak drains slow, and I don't really like that plastic rod holder that I was using during the flip test to hold my rod. I still think it's a little bit cheap. I love the seat though. The seat is really well made. I absolutely have no corrosion on any of the hardware, so they must be using all stainless hardware. And yeah, something most people don't know is this kayak is made in the USA. So this is the end of the video, and hopefully you enjoyed it and found it worth your time. Hopefully it helped you make some informed decisions on whether or not this kayak will work for you. You can find me on these other social media sites here listed, and thanks for watching Kayak DIY.